What's up YouTube? We're finally back with another betting breakdown video. I'm going to be going over the matchups for UFC 276. We have an absolutely stacked card this weekend for International Fight Week, and I'm really excited to break these down. I'm only going to be going over the matchups that I have thoughts on, or I will be placing bets on myself, which in this case is going to be almost all of them. There's going to be a lot of value in the bets this week since it is International Fight Week. Usually the UFC will look to showcase some of their talent on a big card like this, and that usually does make for a good parlay night. Okay, so let's get right into it with the first matchup. The first one I want to go over is Maycee Barber versus Jessica Eye. Now, Jessica Eye is a veteran in the UFC. She's lost her last 3 and also 4 of her last 5. These losses were to Cynthia Calvillo, Valentina herself, Joanne Wood, and Jennifer Maia. I actually thought that she may have beat Jennifer Maia. At the very least, she looked decent. She was just coming forward the entire time and trying to put her pace on her. I believe that is the strategy she's going to use against Maycee. As you can see from some of the stats listed here, she's very aggressive, she has decent wrestling, and definitely more experience than Barber. And most of her fights do go the distance whether she wins or loses. She doesn't inflict the most damage on her opponents, and she's pretty tough herself. Maycee Barber is a young star on the rise here. She's got definitely more power, and when it comes to aggression, she is more aggressive when she actually throws her techniques, but not as aggressive in Eye in the sense that she's not just going to walk you down all night. She should have a lot better striking, but we'll see if she can handle Jessica Eye's wrestling and her experience. Overall, I'd say she's more skilled. She looked really good in her last 2 fights versus Montana De La Rosa and Miranda Maverick. Both of those women are solid grapplers and really strong, just like Eye. I really think Maycee Barber is going to win this fight, especially if she looks as good as she did in her last 2. I'm going to throw that on a few parlays, along with the fact that I think this one is going to go over a round and a half. Like I said, Jessica Eye very rarely gets finished. She's only been finished by Valentina Shevchenko, and Maycee Barber's pretty tough in her own right, and I just simply don't see Jessica Eye finishing her unless there's some sort of injury or some weird freak accident. For the next one I want to go over, it's going to be Uriah Hall versus Andre Muniz. I'm really excited over Andre Muniz. This guy is a jiu-jitsu ace. I'll put him right up there with Charles Oliveira with his jiu-jitsu ability. Most of his wins do come by first-round submission. You can see BJJ is highlighted there because it should be a significant advantage versus Uriah Hall. Hall sometimes can shut down versus an intense fighter like Sean Strickland, Paulo Costa, and Andre Muniz definitely fits the bill on that one. He doesn't always do that well versus pressure, and I don't mean like big moments, I mean physically getting pressured with the other fighter coming forward. All of those things point to, a bad outcome for him in this fight against Andre Muniz. Andre is a lot more aggressive, he's stronger, and by far the better grappler. I personally see this fight ending before the end of the second round. As I mentioned, Muniz does a lot of his damage, by submitting, especially in the first round. With the value that we're getting for a TKO or for a second round stoppage, I have to go ahead and go with these. You can, of course, always go the safe route and place a prop for him to win in the first round. You can even place a single bet on him to win by submission. It's minus 130. It's not plus money, but it's not the worst value. There's a reason he's a favorite to win by submission. I will just say that. And of course, we're going to throw him on some parlays. I think he's a really strong parlay pick. In this next matchup, we have Dricus du Plessis versus Brad Tavares. Brad Tavares is a veteran in the UFC. He's been in the UFC for more than 10 years, plenty of experience. He's a really tough guy. Dricus du Plessis is another rising star, and I think they're going to look to showcase him and build his name up. Every single time I've seen him, he's looked amazing. He's very athletic, he's fast, strong, and his striking is really good. Even in his UFC debut, he knocked out a UFC veteran. And I think this kid has a lot of potential. He has a 100% finish rate, and even though he's been getting knockouts recently, he does have more submissions in his career than knockouts. So I'm going to go with the submission prop, as well as a round 2 prop and a decision prop. I am going to be placing all 3 of these And if either of the three hit, I will make a profit. And this is, of course, in addition to my parlay play. I definitely think Duplessis is at a solid value at minus 140. In my eyes, he feels like more than a 2-to-1 favorite. And of course, don't forget to be mindful about the units and the amount you're placing on each bet when you're doing a hedge like this. If you feel more confident about one than the other, perhaps you want to set it to where you're betting enough money on each of them to where that pick wins you the most money if it were to hit. A lot of people will just put the same amount on each one, and then if you pay attention to the odds, one might pay more than the other. The main thing is that you at least want to secure a profit if either of these three hit, or maybe you're only going to place two of them. But either way, the point is be mindful of how much you're betting. This is why I include the unit amounts. So that way, when you hit one of them, you're going to get a profit either way. The next one should be a really good fight. We have Jalen Turner versus Brad Riddell. Of course, Brad Riddell comes from City Kickboxing with Israel Adesanya and all of those guys. In Jalen Turner, we have another rising star. He has a lot of momentum on his side. His last few fights have been dominant. Most of his fights go the same way. He uses his range to hurt you with strikes and then often will come in and choke you. He's definitely going to have the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu advantage and also the range advantage. It's tough to know who will be better at striking, but I definitely think Jalen Turner has the tools to be a contender in the UFC and potentially a champion one day. I think minus 150 is insane value for Jalen Turner. I really believe that he'll be able to win this fight. Brad Riddell, to be fair, is pretty tough to knock out. Rafael Fiziev was giving him all he had. He finally got him out of there with a spinning wheel kick. But yeah, I do believe that Jalen Turner will be able to submit Brad Riddell. I'm not sure if he can knock him out. So I think just based on the value alone, submission is the right way to go at plus 450. And then Turner by points is actually the safer pick in my eyes. But at 3-to-1, that's definitely a good value. So I would sprinkle maybe half a unit or so, maybe a little bit more on each of these. You can go up to a unit, of course. But yeah, these are just guidelines. So just, pay attention to those amounts. Brad Riddell is a Grady striker, but I think that the range will give him some issues. And also, Jalen Turner is really confident. He just walks people down. And Jalen Turner, of course, has a 100% finish rate. He finishes all his fights. All right, so the next one up on the list is Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munoz. Everyone likes to watch Sean O'Malley fight, whether you love him or hate him. You want to watch him fight. He's an entertaining fighter, and Pedro Munoz is a dog. This is obviously, other than Cheeto, I think we can all agree this is the first real big test. Obviously, he failed his first test in Cheeto Vera, but this is a very similar opponent with Pedro Munoz, and he actually has probably a little bit more experience than Cheeto. Pedro has vicious leg kicks and an insane guillotine, so those are two things that O'Malley will look to avoid. But yeah, O'Malley, of course, is going to have all the flashy techniques. He's going to have the range. I see Pedro Munoz looking to come forward the entire time and land bombs and leg kicks. He might look to take down O'Malley or look to get a choke. But yeah, that's the strategy that we're going to see. O'Malley is going to be looking to be the matador again and just picking him apart from the outside. Munoz can win with leg kicks. He can win with a guillotine after a wrestling sequence. There's a couple different ways. He can also win a decision, perhaps. But yeah, for Sean O'Malley, I think it's going to be really hard for him to knock out Pedro Munoz. He's never been finished in his career, and he's faced some absolute killers. So I just think he's one of those guys that is too hard to finish. Of course, anybody can get knocked out, but I'll be really impressed if Pedro Munoz gets knocked out. All right, the next one here, we got Alex Pereira versus Sean Strickland. This one should be amazing, guys. Sean Strickland, just an absolute maniac. The gym war guy, the road rage guy. That guy versus the dude who knocked out Israel Adesanya. That's what we're looking at here. The UFC is thinking it'll be a striking fest. I'm kind of thinking and hoping Strickland might wrestle with him just because it'll be an easy way out for him. But I think we know with his pride and ego, he will look to stand and bang at some point. Alex Pereira will have a huge size advantage. He's 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. He has less experience in total MMA fights, but he probably has more pro fights if you include his entire kickboxing career. Strickland should have the cardio, the wrestling, and the aggression. But yeah, in most of Sean Strickland's fights, the third round is the most dangerous dangerous for both people. He usually will stand in the middle and just swing. So that's why I have winning round 3 at 6-1 odds. I think that's a great value. Either one of these guys could get a knockout in that round. I put Pereira by knockout in round 2. Just simply based on the high value, the 6-1 odds. Of course, he can get a knockout in any round. He's very much able to do that, but I believe Sean Strickland's good enough to at least last one. So all of that, along with Sean Strickland by points, plus 250 is also a pretty solid price. And again, if he decides to wrestle or do any sort of grappling, it would be really tough for Pereira to win the fight. So these are the 3 I'm going with. You can decide to go with 2 of these or 1 or what have you. It's basically just a guideline, but I'm placing all 3 of these, and if any one of them hit individually, I'm going to make a profit. So I think it's a nice little way to hedge it. All right, so for our co-main event, Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, we've seen this fight play out twice before. In the second fight, Max Holloway won the first 2 rounds in more dominant fashion than any of the rounds that Volkanovski had won. So those were the 2 most dominant rounds in their 10 total round fights. But it seemed like he just got outpointed barely for the last 3 rounds. It wasn't a convincing win, but if you look at the scoring system, it seemed like he won the fight with just leg kicks and control and things like that. So if you're someone like me who judges the entire fight just based on damage, maybe you think Max Holloway did win the fight. But we all know Alexander Volkanovski is a decision fighter. He's a point fighter. There's no denying that. Having said that, I think Holloway is more dangerous himself. Alexander Volkanovski is extremely durable as well, so it's hard to finish him. So I think I think this is going to be an excellent fight. It's going to be a war. That's why I have Volkanovski by split decision or majority decision. I think Max will bring it enough to at least convince one judge. And even if not, the plus 575 it's enough value to give it a sprinkle. I've put 2.5 units myself on Holloway to win as an underdog. If he can continue to fight like those first 2 rounds in the last fight, he has a strong chance here as an underdog. Either way, I think we're looking at a really close fight. That's the reason for the Holloway and split decision hedge. All right, and as for our main event, Jared Cannonier versus Israel Adesanya. Obviously, we know Izzy is a former kickboxing champ. He has more championship experience, more range. I would go ahead and say more cardio just based on his body type and, the type of things he does in training, like running up sand and all this other bullshit. He works on his breathing a lot, so I believe it'd be very hard to make him tired, other than with wrestling. Jared Cannonier will have a clear-cut strength advantage. If he gets a hold of Israel, he'll be able to take him for a ride and do whatever he wants to do with him. Both of these guys are supremely confident. Both of these guys have the power to put the other one out. If Cannonier fights like Marvin Vettori and can't work his way inside, he's going to be in trouble. He's going to have to mix in his punches with his wrestling to sort of keep Izzy confused. Izzy's going to be so worried about the takedown that he might get caught. Just simply based on value at almost 4-1 odds of a title fight, there's no way I'm not betting on Jared Cannonier. At plus 365, it's insane value, especially when you look at his skill set. He has all the tools that Jan Blachowicz had when he beat Israel Adesanya, which again is the size, strength, wrestling, power. It's the same type of fight. So plus 365, I think, is a total mistake. I think that's the result of all these fanboys, these Israel Adesanya fanboys, just spending all their money, no matter what the odds are, on Izzy. So again, same as the co-main, I'm going Adesanya by split decision, majority decision. Most of his decisions aren't very convincing anyway, so there's a strong chance he might not be able to convince one of the judges. So yeah, I think we're going to be seeing a close fight here. Israel Adesanya's price has gone up significantly in the past week. If you're thinking of betting on him, I really wouldn't. I would only go with some sort of prop bet that you like. But again, Cannonier at plus 365 is insane value. That's a great mathematical bet. And same as the thinking in the last fight, the co-main, I think this is going to be a close fight either way, so that's why I have Adesanya by split or majority decision listed as well. If either one of these hits, we'll be looking at a pretty juicy profit. Here's a couple parlay ticket examples that I've placed and that you can place yourself. As you can see, each of these are at least 2-to-1 odds. Of course, there's more combinations, and of course, you don't have to place all of these in order for it to make sense. But with the parlay picks that we've gone over, these are a couple tickets that, I feel good about. So let's have another winning weekend, keep the streak going, and I'll see you guys at the window.